without us even having to worry about it. So come, we want to hear about the Institute, and we want to hear about missions in Mexico and how we can pray for missionaries better. You can give us lots of insights, so you're prepared. So come on in, Circle 4. Circle 2 is not here. You, Pam, can you go tell Circle 2 to come in, please? Circle 2 to come in. Okay, ladies, let's get started. I want them to sign cards, but I want to hear from the Cobbs. So we want to get started, and it is time. In fact, it is 7:01, and that is time to start. So we want to get started, and we want to sign the cards. And I've been wanting to have the Cobbs here since the mission conference, and every month I either didn't call them or had someone. So this month I said, come. I want to hear them. I want to hear why it's important to go to learn how to learn languages. I think the main thrust of it is learn how to function. They give them a lot more than just ABCs. And they don't teach a language, they teach them how to teach a language, I think, if I'm understanding what it means. So I want all of our ladies here, and I want to help us so set over as much up so we can hear the Cobbs. And it's a good group here, and I'm glad all of you came. And I'm excited to get I keep saying Valentine's, Mother's Day cards signed. And it's a lot of work. And Rosemary has already put in a lot of time getting them ready. And Vicki is going to help us, even though it's a lot more work if they're signed than if we just sent them all through. But those missionary ladies will read them over and think about you and know that you are praying for them. And that's what we want them to know, that Temple Baptist Church, WMC ladies, do take care of their missionaries. They do pray for them. They are behind them in the mission field. Many churches just send off. And when I first started here, they got missionary letters, but no one read them particularly. And they posted up on the board, and they put one in the bulletin someone picked out. But there really was no direct. When they came, preacher was very mission-minded, loved our missionaries. But WMC is the connection between Temple Baptist Church and our missionaries. And that's what I want us to be. That's what we need, to encourage our missionaries, to pray for our missionaries. And the real reason we have WMC is to learn to know our missionaries and to pray for them. I wouldn't waste your time or my time if it wasn't for that reason. So I'm glad you're here. I look at our birthday list, and I don't think any of our birthday girls are here that I have on my list. I've looked it over, and Betty's not here, and Ellen has to work tonight, and Anita Cobb hasn't started getting out since it's daylight. She doesn't drive it when it's dark, and Mitzi's not here. So is there anybody here with a birthday in May? You know circle leaders, if there's one, rat on them a little bit. Tell me if they are here, because I would like to know if they are. So we'll just have to wish them all a birthday later, and thank you for coming. Now, there are special prayer requests for here. Elizabeth gets to go home tomorrow. Pray for her. Linda Jarvis. Linda Isbell went home from the hospital. She fell and really banged herself up. Then just a little raised place in the concrete, just down she went. And then she went to a nephew's place at 8, and got real sick, but it was a blessing because they found out a hernia was pushing her stomach all out of place. So they said God worked in that, helped her. He felt bad because he thought it was his food, but it wasn't at all. It was the hernia. And so they got that fixed, and she's gone home. Who else? I'm trying to think of others here that we need to pray for especially. So tell me if you know of someone that it's in my brain, but it's not coming out. Anybody else with a special prayer request? Whose husband? Mitzi's. What's wrong? I knew I missed him yesterday, but I didn't. Oh, he's had a lot of cancer. He's had hundreds. I don't know how many cancers, but this must have been worse than some of them. Okay. Well, I knew, and George. Most of you don't know George. I can't even say his last name. He comes all the time to the 9 o'clock service, and he had cancer inside of his ear, and they had to remove 2 different places. Made me hurt almost to even think about it. So there are several we need to pray for from here. For our people, let's be faithful. Pray for our pastor. Pray for Mother's Day Sunday. That we'll have visiting mothers, and many that will do. We have one lady ready to get baptized that got saved on Easter Sunday. So pray that she will do that. And so we have then more on the next 2 Sundays ready to be baptized. But we want people to follow up and serve the Lord. So let's pray for our services. Let's pray for the missionaries on the field. And we'll talk about, I think of special, and at the end we'll try, I know at least the real special ones, we will try to remember them. So at the end, I know, yes, ma'am. Well, at the end, is one here?
Well, no, not yet. It's I forgot about a coworker. Her name is Christine. She's got a tumor on her kidney, and they're sending her to an oncology doctor. So prayers for Christine.
Okay. And we want to continue to pray for Christine, pray for her. And then for Wanda, they were coming. They asked if we had a microwave here to do her lunch. Is she here? I don't see them. Is she here? Okay. I hadn't seen her, so I'm looking to say. She still is on dialysis. The doctor is telling them that on for life. But Legine up in our sound booth would say, maybe not so, because I was on dialysis and they said, you're on it for life, but she's not. She's been 15 years? 13 years off of dialysis, 15 since. So we just praise the Lord and know it can be for Wanda as well. She's here? She's coming? I was trying to see who else was coming in with you. Betty? Is Betty Rome coming? Betty Rome, come up here. You have a birthday this month. I thought that's Betty. Come right down. You tried to not come. Happy birthday to Betty. No, you want to let you catch it. I won't make. Yes, ma'am. Yes, we'd like to have people. And another rotation, Elizabeth's daughter texted me or emailed me or something today and said if we could maybe help take some lunch in. But she doesn't because Elizabeth can't use her, I think it's her left arm at all. It's moving now, but it's not doing anything. She can't use her phone, so you can't call her during the day. But she's going to be at home, but maybe help with some lunches. So if you'd like to, she wants maybe to take it to the other Debbie's house. She lives with Donna, one daughter, but just see me if you'd like to help maybe just take a lunch once a week or just one time. That would be a blessing to help her. So, another one we need to pray for is, I'm thinking of Jules' wife. Sandy has not been out of the house for she came for 2 weeks. She's drug here, but she hasn't been out of the house doing anything really for 3 weeks. So we need to pray for her. And that reminds me of the Haglers. Both of them continually need prayer. So there's many of our people. So as we think about them, remember them. Do you have someone, Elizabeth? Who? Kim Cummings is going into radiation. She's had chemo, it's over, and now it's radiation. We need to pray for her. And that made me think of somebody else and forget that quick. Man, if you can think of and forget that quick, you're doing really good. My memory goes and comes, but I always know he'll come back, so that's good. So now we are going to hear from the Cobbs. Now I'm going to this is a family feud, whatever they want to do. I want to hear from their ministry. I want to hear about the Institute. Why, as a missionary, should I go to the Institute? Why should I go? I'm going to learn Spanish or something. I can't learn, so I'm not going, but whatever. Maybe if I'd have gone that, I could have learned a language. Oh, maybe. Past hope now, but we want to learn about that. They've been in Mexico. The name of the game is to help us learn how to pray for your ministry, but how to pray for missionaries. So I want you both to come and just let's hear, and then we'll have questions and answers of the rest of the time. Or sometime.
Well, I brought my Bible, but I won't preach if I can help it. So I want to say that I like your carpet. Last time I was here, it was just cement. It's really, really nice. Looks really good. And I was thinking if we had a lot of people like Miss Glada and you ladies concerned about missions, I think things would be going better, amen. Sometimes we forget that the reason we are here is to reach the world. It's not just so we can get together and encourage one another. That's part of it, and that's good. But Jesus left us here with a commission, and I think sometimes we forget, we get our eyes off of that goal. So I really appreciate what you all do. I'll just start talking, and if Mary wants to come up and interrupt me, I'll give her that permission. And if you all have a question, I guess this is going to be quite informal. Is that okay? And just raise your hand, wave it at me. Those lights are kind of bright, so if I can see you pretty much. So, well, we started out in missions soon after we were married. I think we worked a year at our church with the young people, with the youth, and then, we were married in 71. In 1973, we started some deputation. We went a few months, came to Texas, and that was an experience in itself. I mean, it was quite a move for a couple of young people, and we came to attend a new school that was just beginning. We'd heard about it. We wanted to go to the mission field. We were anxious to go, and then we heard about this school called Baptist Bible Translators Institute, and it started in Fort Worth, and then almost a year later we moved up to Bowie, where we are now. So that was 1973, And we were very glad that we attended the school. We learned a lot of things. It was new, and so I think it's better now in a lot of ways because we've learned a lot of things. Things have changed in the field of linguistics, and we've tried to keep up with the science of linguistics and whatever methods or whatever people were learning. And so I feel like it's better today than it was then, but not just because we're there, but we're glad we're there. So we went on to South America in 1976. 76. We weren't there long, and there was a lot of political trouble. And some of you may remember the kidnapping of Bitterman, Chester Bitterman, I think, Chet Bitterman. He was a Wycliffe translator. He was kidnapped and murdered, and the communists were trying to get a hold of all those back areas where the Indian people live, and they've pretty well done that. And they didn't want missionaries back there, and there's just a lot of turmoil. So we had to leave because we had run out of visas. We only had a temporary visa. We studied Spanish, and we're getting started. And we hoped to go back, but we never did. It just wasn't working. So we looked around at other countries, especially Spanish-speaking countries, where there are Indian people, and that was the burden that we had to reach people that were beyond the Spanish language, maybe people with no scriptures. And so we saw that Mexico has a lot of languages, and a lot of them had no Bible translation done. And so we moved to the state of Oaxaca in southern Mexico, and we were there about 8 years and worked with a group called the Zapotecs. Now there's about 44 different dialects of this language, and they're different enough, according to some who research these things, that they would need a translation of the Bible for their dialect. And so we worked there for about 8 years, and it was there were some difficult times because the people didn't trust us. I mean, you think about it, why would these rich, educated, of course we weren't rich and we weren't very smart either, but why would these Americans that live in a land where money grows on trees, why would they want to live in that village? They were very suspicious, so we must be up to something. And we would try to tell them, but I don't know, I don't think they ever did believe us. So they kicked us out after a few weeks, and then we moved closer to the village, and we still maintained contact with the people. Some of them would come to the village, to the market, and they would stay in our house, and we had a nice little courtyard, and they could stay there, and so we maintained that relationship. And after about 1.5 years, we moved back into the village again. The problem was the Marxists, the communists. Some of the young leaders had gone off to college and studied to be teachers, where they could come back to their village and teach the children in Spanish and try to get them ready for the Spanish school. It was a good idea, but the school the college where they were trained was just full of Marxists. And so some of them came back with these ideas. So you can imagine the presence of an American there was not appreciated. But I think some of the people appreciated us, and especially the ladies that had babies, and they'd get sick, and I'd give them a shot, and some of them got better and didn't die. I mean, you'd appreciate someone doing that for you. But others, they could care less about babies, I guess. So anyhow, we after about 6 months, they made us leave again, at that time, we moved back to the, we had the house there in the market town, and we stayed there, and we had a group of Spanish-speaking people would come and meet together, and we'd have like church service, started a little mission like there, and never got very big, but we would continue to go back just for visits, not to stay, to the Indian village, and we decided that we would do some, try to do Bible translation. So we found a man that was really intelligent, a young fella that would come during the week, and he would work with us, and we would translate a portion, maybe a story from the Bible, a miracle of Jesus. See, you've got to give people something that they can understand and enjoy, because they've never read anything. Their language hadn't even been written, and they don't just go from nothing to reading a Bible. That's, it'd be nice if they did, but so we would do a story, put it in a book, had some little pictures and stuff, and go and distribute them, and then we'd go back and do some more, and so we did that for a few years, and then there was a missionary farther up in actually in the state of Chihuahua, which is right below like El Paso. You come down about 300 miles or so, and up in the mountains. He had a Bible college, and he had several students, Mexican young people that wanted to be missionaries to tribal people in Mexico and maybe other parts of Latin America, but he didn't know how to train them, and so we moved up there, and for about 4 years we worked with this Bible Institute, and we would train, work especially teaching phonetics. That's learning sounds, and we would teach that, and then a couple other subjects, and so at the same time, we helped another missionary had a work he was starting, and he went on furlough, and that was Spanish-speaking people. Of course, they were all Spanish-speaking up there, and so we would work with doing church building, preaching, teaching, and then we'd also work with this Bible Institute. And I had learned all the phonetics, all of the terminology and all of everything about it, but in English. But in order to teach this in Spanish, I had to do a lot of learning, and there was no book that I could find for a textbook, so I translated the Manual of Articulatory Phonetics, which was kind of the Bible of phonetics in those days, and I translated that into Spanish, and we had recordings. And of course, they were a lot of sounds. I didn't need to change the sounds, but the man might, he would make the sound and then he would tell what it was. Well, I would take that part out and put it in Spanish so we could use the recordings. And little did I know that the Lord was preparing us to come back to Baptist Bible Translators Institute and get involved and teach. And so we worked there for 4 years. We worked along the border in Ciudad Juarez for about 6 years in church building, and the city was just growing and growing, and people were coming from the interior up to work in the factories, the Japanese and the Germans and all these different companies, American companies, I suppose, too. They started building these factories right along the border on the Mexican side. So all these people started coming from the interior to get these jobs. But they just would move out into the desert, and people would get a little piece of property. They could afford it, or they would manage to buy a piece of property, And then they would erect a house, if you could call it that, made out of pallets and cardboard, if they could get some tin for the roof or plastic or whatever. And that's the way they would live. And little by little, they would buy cement blocks and just start saving the blocks. And then when they could start building a more permanent house, they would do that. And, that was, they were very industrious, and but when we first moved into that little neighborhood, I looked around and I had a Mexican missionary friend with me, and he said, "Hermano, this is the place right here." And I said, "But there's nobody here." And he said, "There will be." And he was right. That place just filled up with people. So we started a church there, and so at this time, there was a brother here in Bowie working with BBTI, and he was all by himself. He had a wife. She had, I think, some dementia, and it was very difficult for her, or for him too. He had to keep an eye on her. She's with the Lord now, and she was a wonderful missionary and spent 20 years in Papua New Guinea, and just a wonderful person, but her mind was going. And he really needed help. He's trying to teach all the classes by himself, and they'd been asking us to come help him. And we said, no, we don't want to do that. And I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years went on, but finally they asked us again, and for some reason I thought, okay, I've got to pay attention to this. We didn't want to leave. We had turned over the church we started, and we went down the river, and we were in a little town trying to start another work, and it wasn't going very well, actually, but we weren't really discouraged. We didn't want to quit, but we didn't really have anything that organized that we couldn't leave. So we were able to leave at that time, and I told Mary, I said, I feel like if we don't go back to BBTI is going to cease to exist. And I think it would have. And she really didn't want to go. I didn't want to go, really. And she didn't want to go more than I didn't want to go. In other words, we were happy where we were. We knew how to function. We could get around. It was a couple years after that, the violence started. In our little community, there was a little restaurant there about 100 yards from our church. This was after we left. Somebody went in there and murdered 8 people in that restaurant. Things changed. It got really bad. But when we were there, it was fine. There's no problems, just normal stuff. But so anyhow, Mary said, well, I will go if you want me to. And I said, no, that's not good enough. I said, you've got to want to. And God gave her a want to. I don't know how he did it, but the Lord did it. And so we came back.
Lord changes hearts, and he puts in our heart what he has for us. And when the Lord began to change my heart, I saw this guy frustrated because what he was trying to do wasn't happening. And the Lord began to change my heart. And when the Lord began to change my heart, we knew for sure that's what we were supposed to do. And so we live by faith. We're saved by faith, and we live by faith. And we came back to Bowie. I came by faith, and knowing that this is what God had for us. And since we've been there, I look over our new students as they come in, and I see these young women with their young families and with their babes in arms, which is where I was when we first started out. And am I talking too loud?
I don't think so. You're all right, I think.
And I see myself, and I understand what they're facing. And my heart goes out to them. I just had a call, which I missed, and then a text on the way here. One of our young ladies she was single when she was a student, and she's married and she's a mother now, and she said that she wanted to talk to me and just share with me what God is doing in her life and how God used me in her life. And I'm just really anxious to get to talk to her tomorrow. There's nothing better than knowing that you are where God wants you to be and you're functioning as He made you to function. It doesn't get any better than that, and there's no reason to be afraid of what the Lord has for us, because He knows what's going to give us joy, and He knows where we fit. He doesn't take a square peg and try and put it in a round hole. And I understand and I recognize the fact that I'm different in some aspects than a lot of women. I don't like crafts. I don't like shopping. Some of those things. But then I don't have to be like somebody else. I can be who I am and function as God would have me to function. And feel like, looking back, that everything that God had for us and what we experienced was preparing us for where we are now. And we've been where we are now for about 20 years. I'm at a great 22 years, yeah. Excuse me. I'm at a great time in my life. I can enjoy my grandchildren when they come around. I'm well enough to be able to do a lot of things. And just things in the ministry, I've got a lot of freedom. And I get to teach some. The first time I taught a class in linguistics, it was with actual trembling. I had never gotten up and taught a class like that, especially a class where there were men involved. And I look back now, and I had to lean on God very hard. We had gotten in Mexico where, you kind of know what to do, and you kind of know the routine, and you know what to say and how to act and I came back, and when we came to Bowie, I had no intention of teaching. That wasn't what our plan was, but we saw it was very, very necessary. And I had to lean hard on God. And I grew more in faith and in my spiritual walk in that year, because I had to say, God, I can't do it. You have to do it. And so we walk by faith, and that's where we are right now. God, we can't continue this work. We don't know where it's going in the future. But God, this is yours, not ours. And we're just going to keep forging ahead. I'm believing God and asking God to raise up an army of young people that aren't satisfied with the status quo, that aren't happy just to live for themselves and what they can get out of this world, but someone that wants to know God in a real a vibrant way, and to walk with Him and to serve Him, and raise up an army of people to go out and preach His word. And that's what we're believing Him for.
Amen. Thank you. And I would say this, whether Mary was here or not, she's probably the best teacher we have at BBTI. She really works at it. And every year, even though she's taught a class for 20 years now, every year she works to prepare to make sure that it's up to date and improves. And I always wish I'd be a little more like her. But anyhow, I was thinking that you don't have to want to do something for that to be the will of God. It may be that we have the idea, if God wanted me to do that, I would really want to do it. Guys go off to war, I guess women do too, and they don't want to, but there's something needs to be done. When you look out there and you see what's not being done, you see people that are living and dying and never hearing the gospel. I think someone needs to say, hey, I don't really want to go, but nobody else is going, and somebody needs to go. And Lord, if you don't want me to, you stop me. I think we are teaching and preaching that, oh, if God, really what we're saying is if God makes you go. Otherwise, you're free to stay home. Well, why don't we say, let's go unless God stops us? Move ahead. And everyone's situation is different, and especially when you have a family and you have to be in agreement about making moves in your life and getting, but God has been sending us people, not always young people. We have a couple there this year at our school that are in their 60s, and they're going to the mission field. They've been in the pastorate ministry, but they're going to Nicaragua, and it's going to be a little difficult. But we have a family. They came when the man was 61. He graduated, did a little deputation, and he and his wife took off. She's a couple years younger than he is. They're 70, 72 now maybe, and he was here on furlough a while back. They're in Papua New Guinea, and he said, Brother Rex, you won't see me again until you get to heaven. He said, I'm going to die over there, but he's having the time of his life. God is using him, blessing him. He's doing what we taught at BBTI. He's putting into practice what we have taught him, and it really works. We had a young couple at BBTI last week. They spoke in chapel, and they went to Uganda to a tribe of people. It's a large tribe, but they speak their own language, and only about a few of them know some English, not very much. And they put into practice the language skills and learning and tools that we gave them at BBTI, and they're speaking that language. Now, they probably have a ways to go. You don't learn a language in just a couple years or 3 or 4. You keep learning and learning more and getting better at it. But they're just really doing good and having a good time. And you can tell they enjoy it. They love it. Their children they're happy to be, out in the villages with the kids, and they're, sometimes we're afraid, especially for our children. Well, what if they get sick? Well, God seems to take care of us. And so anyhow, we, like Mary said, what we've been through in the past prepares us for what he wants us to do now. I had to go back and relearn all of the terminology for phonetics because I started teaching it, and I knew it in Spanish, but I had forgotten it in English, so I got to go back, but it wasn't so bad. But what we do at BBTI is we try to teach the missionary to do whatever needs to be done to go as far as he needs to go linguistically or culturally or even geographically. And so many missionaries without specialized training, they can go to Bible college and they can learn how to preach and they can learn all this good stuff, and that's important, but they don't know how to do it in another culture, in another language. And that's the challenge. So they may have a language school to go to, and that's good, but there may be something better because, for one thing, there are 7,111 or something like that language. That's a lot of languages. I would guess, and this is just a guess, I would guess at least 6,000 of those languages do not have language schools. And so how are they going to learn those languages? Well, we teach them how. We teach them the phonetics where they can recognize any sound that a human can make. Doesn't matter what he looks like on the outside. Inside, we're all made the same. We all have the same speech mechanism. We have teeth, or used to anyhow. We have a tongue, we have lips, we have a palate, we have a throat, and we have vocal cords, and we have lungs. And in other words, any sound that those people make, we can make it as well if we know what they're doing to produce that sound. And then we practice it in the classroom, and we're able to recognize it and not just say, well, it's kind of like this, and compare it to a sound in our language, because they're all, the sounds are different. They may be close, but when you only get close, you speak with a bad accent. And we want to eliminate that. And so if the missionary can recognize exactly what the sound is, and then he can reproduce it and speak much, much more like the natives, or almost maybe without any accent at all. And we've all have experiences calling, or getting calls from people in India or the Philippines. They're speaking English, but sometimes they're hard to understand. Well, who's to say our missionaries are not going to speak that same way? And it's, thank God that somebody's speaking the gospel, even if they're speaking with an accent, that at least people are getting it. But it's so much better when you can really speak well. The people will say, hey, you're kind of one of us. You talk like we do. Now we've got a different message, and they don't think they need that message that we have. They already have their religion. So, but if they will accept us, and if we can communicate with them, especially if we're willing to spend time with them and enjoy being with them and eating their food and doing what they do to a point, you know what I mean? We can't, there's a lot of things that we can't do, but we can be in the community, and the people will accept us, and then hopefully they'll accept what we're saying. It takes time with a lot of people. You don't just go and preach and give an invitation. It just doesn't work that way. So anyhow, we teach the phonetics, and then we teach some of the linguistics, and that gets a little more complicated. I won't take time to explain that much, but then we teach a language learning method where we'll take an actual language, and we've done it with a language from Papua New Guinea, from Cambodia, from language a couple times from Japanese or Korean, and we do it with Spanish sometimes, but we'll have a person who can speak the language, and then he just sits there. He's not a teacher. He's just an informant. He's just a helper. And we teach the students how to get the language from that person. We show them a step-by-step method where you start very simply, and you get the easier stuff first, where you're getting accustomed to all of the sounds, and you get like 1,000 object-like words. Just everything's got a name. It doesn't matter. We're not necessarily trying to learn everything, but we're getting the sounds, and then we start making those utterances longer. For instance, you learn the word dog. Then it's okay, he's a big dog, a little dog, a skinny dog, a fat dog, a black dog, a white dog, and we start adding modifiers. And in other words, we just gradually increase what we're able to say and handle, and we're speaking fluently, even in a very limited way. We don't know much, but we are speaking like the people, and then we just keep going. Or if there's a language school to go to, we tell the students, do this first, use this method, and then when you go into the language school, you're not struggling with pronunciation. You will not get any words that you can't pronounce because you already have all the sounds. You learn more vocabulary, you learn more grammar, but you've got the sounds, and forever you're going to be able to speak those sounds and sound good. And so And of course, if there is no language school, you just keep going and we do dialogues where we actually have a couple, the language help students, or we don't call them students, they're learners. But the helper, he will kind of direct and help and explain things. And you just work on these dialogues until you got all of this vocabulary. And anyhow, if there's no language school to go to, you can still learn that language. And it's the kind of thing when you learn the method using one language, you take the method to a different language and use the method to learn that language. And so that's a course that we really think is important. And our missionaries, many of them are putting into practice what we teach them, and it's such an encouragement. Others, sometimes they study, we give them all of this, and then they'll write a prayer letter and they'll read it, and I'll think, didn't you attend BBTI? It's like they forgot what we told them, but that doesn't happen often. But when folks really put into practice what we teach, and of course we have Bible translation where we teach principles of translating the Word of God into the languages where it's needed, and we spend quite a bit of time with that. Also literacy. Mary teaches literacy. When people don't know how to read or they're not motivated to read, then they're not going to, you can give them a Bible and it's or a New Testament or whatever, they may tear it up and start their cook fires with it. If it would be worthless if they don't know how to read or if they don't want to read. So you have to teach them and motivate them and give them things in their language that will get them started. And so that's important. We have some other practical courses. Right now, we're having jungle camp, and we'll spend a week out in the woods. We have a big piece of property there in Bowie and out in the country, and a lot of woods, and we just learn how to survive and learn principles of survival, whether it's in a big city or out in the jungle or up in the mountains. In an emergency situation, you've got to survive, and it's quite a bit of fun, especially when it rains every day. And so they're living in tents and hammocks and stuff. But so we've been there 22 years, but we're still excited about what we have. But the discouragement and the frustration is trying to convince missionaries and also pastors. Pastors catch on when we can explain to them what this training will help the missionary do. Usually they say, hey, I like that. And then they would recommend that the missionaries attend BBTI. But the missionaries are in a hurry. And sometimes they'll say, yeah, that sounds good. That would help me. But we need to get to the field. We don't have time. And so that's the discouraging part of it. But those that do attend are really helped by what we have. You got something to say?
Yes, before I sit down for good, I did want to mention that one of the joys that I get to do is once a month, on average, we have an afternoon class, an hour class for the ladies. And we talk about, it's a very informal, sit in a semicircle, a sharing time on some different principles from God's Word. One is accepting ourselves as God made us to be. One of them is having a correct image of who God is, what kind of a Heavenly Father He is. We talk about hospitality. We talk about adapting to culture. We talk about, one that we talk about is fear, because we all have fears. And sometimes missionary wives are uncomfortable about talking about the things that they fear. They feel like if they're hesitant, that it looks bad and people won't understand, and people will think, "What's wrong with you? You're not very spiritual." But the truth of the matter is that we all have that, and so it's just a time of getting together and encouraging each other in the Lord and what He can do, and that's a real joy to me, especially to see what God does with these sessions. And sometimes I just try and guide them in a certain direction, and sometimes God will just really touch hearts and He'll open them up, and those ladies will share with each other from their hearts, and I learn from them, and that's another one of the joys that I have. So I'm going to sit down now.
Okay. Well, the ladies may have a question. I don't know, what time do we need to stop, right?
Well, it's just about time, because we need the last 15 minutes. So
Okay.
if anyone has a question, this has been so good, I don't want you to stop.
Okay, let me say just one more thing. Mary's in charge also of the child care. And we require both husband and wife to be in the classes. The wife, she may have a baby two days old or a 2-year-old child, and she's thinking, I need to stay with my child. I need to stay home. But that child will be well taken care of, and Mary will make sure they are. So whatever age the children are, they may be teenagers. We oversee their schooling, they'll come with homeschooling material, and we help them. And we'll rotate where someone will be with the children at all times, and they're well taken care of. And so the ladies, sometimes they're hesitant, but once they get in the classroom and they start learning these things, one lady said one time, she said, "I cannot imagine going to the field with my husband knowing this and me not knowing it." And she was very glad. But you see, half of the population of the world is women. Who's going to reach the women? The man, he's limited in ability to really relate to. I mean, he can preach to them, I guess, but that's not always what's needed. But that wife, if she can communicate, she is a missionary, and that would be something to pray for your missionary ladies. Encourage them to get the language and to get with the people and not be afraid, and tell them, "Sister, I'm praying for you, and I'm praying that God will help you." Now, she's got to take care of the children. They need to be homeschooled for them usually, and there's a lot of responsibility in the home, so she can't be out as much as her husband. But she needs to be out with the people all she can and be involved. And that's what the women on the mission field need. They need to see someone that is normal, someone that has children, and the children aren't, they're disciplined, and their home is in order, and she has a husband that loves her, and it's the way a Christian family ought to be. And those women can see that, and they can say, "Hey, tell me how I can have that." And so anyhow, that's an important part of our training, is training the ladies and caring for the children so that they can get the same training. And when we were in school, Mary took courses that I was not smart enough to take when we were at BBTI the first time. And so some of the courses that she took, then when we came back, she could teach those courses where I had to learn it over again, or had to learn it for the first time. But so the ladies, when it comes to language learning, sometimes I think ladies have an advantage. So I won't mention why, because not that they talk more than us men, but that's important that you're not afraid to talk. So anyhow, is there a question real quick? And yes, ma'am. Or right here in the.
How long does the term last?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. 9 months. It's one full, like a school year, August to May, and 9 months. Yes.
How many people do you have on staff?
Okay, we have 4 families, and there's out of that 4, out of the 8 people, there's 5 of us, 5 or 6 that are teachers. We kind of each have our expertise, and so we have 4 families that are teaching, and so yes.
How large are your classes?
Well, not large enough because there's more missionaries out there that need to be there. We have averaged over the last 22 years about 12 students per year. Now, a big class for us would be 22 or 24, and that would pretty well fill up our classroom, although we're in the process of building a new addition with bigger classrooms, and it's going to be really nice. But this year, to be honest with you, our class is very low. We only have 5 students, and we work to get them, but the year before we had pretty much full. But this year and next year, pray for us, because I'm calling every missionary I can find that I can get a phone number, and but it's not going very well. We have a few signed up, but so far we're just not getting them, and we really need to. So, but we can grow. We have 117 acres. We can move. We can get more houses. God is not limited to provide money. We're building a building, and God has provided thousands of dollars. I don't know where it's come from, but we still have money to spend. We have a lot more to do, but we've come, each stage we've had the money for it, and money's not a problem for God, but getting the hearts of his people. He doesn't make us do anything in missions. It's not like you just have to. I mean, you can say no, and I think a lot of people do, but getting people's hearts, I'm not saying God is limited, but God has given us a free will. And so, yes.
With COVID, where it is in the countries, when these people go through these courses, and maybe it's a year too late before they can get to the field, do they have any way to, refresh their?
Well, I think I know what you mean. They can forget some of the things we taught them. Well, we encourage them to keep up with it, but they probably are so busy on deputation, but especially the phonetics, if they can remember that. But they've got the material. They can go back. They can listen to recordings to get familiar with the sounds again. And so I don't think it's a big problem. It would be good if they could go to the field immediately, but usually there's more deputation they need to do and waiting for visas. There's just a lot of things to pray about when it comes to missions. Just getting visas is a big deal. Yes?
So are the classes Monday through Friday, or are they still able to go and visit churches on deputation?
Oh, the missionaries are, yes, and I encourage the missionaries. I tell them, look, you do not need to stop your deputation. You can be at BBTI studying Monday through Friday. The weekends you're free. We have hundreds and hundreds of churches in this part of Texas and Oklahoma. Within 2 or 3 hours, there's no limit to the churches they can be in, but they just have to get the meetings here instead of somewhere across the country. And I encourage them to do that. So if you ever talk to anybody, a missionary, and I would really beg you to do this. When a missionary comes, say, hey, do you know about BBTI? It's right up the road, just an hour or so away. You need to know about it, and direct them, encourage them to look into it and call us and talk to us and give us a chance to convince them. And one of the saddest things we hear sometimes is a missionary will say, I wish I would have known about BBTI before I went to the field. We've heard that several times. And it hurts me because we've got to get the word out. We've got to at least let them know what we have. And of course, we use the internet any way we can advertise, but just word of mouth is what works best, I think. So, any other question? Yes. I'm sorry, I don't hear very well. Virtual. Oh, no, we don't. We're talking about it, but so much of what we teach is hands-on. We have to get feedback from the student, and it just very practical, and hands-on type training. And I don't think we could do that very well on a video or the internet. There may be some things we could do, but the fear I have is that somebody will get a little bit and they'll say, okay, I'm all set. But there's so much they're not getting, and if it's sort of a compromise, if we give them a little bit, we think, well, it's better than nothing. But we have something much better if they'll come and spend 9 months. So that's the challenge, to convince them, missionaries, to do that. So, Ms. Glaze, thank you very much. And y'all come visit us. We're just up the road. We love you. Oh yeah, come on second Monday, the weekend before the second Monday.
Yeah, they did come. I didn't get to go up there. It was a day I couldn't, but I would like to go see the thing. And learning language has never been my thing, but I think this would help all of our missionaries. And I wanted you ladies to know, pray for them, pray for missionaries that should go, because learning the language, missionaries that go to the field and don't learn the language are not nearly as effective as missionaries that go to the field and really they speak like we do. If a missionary gets to the place where you can't tell the difference from them speaking and the national, they're more apt to reach their people than if they continually speak through interpreters and interrupters. They're not nearly as effective. So learning the language and learning how to learn the language is a very important thing. So I think this is very worthy to pray for them. They're one of our missionaries now. They was at our mission conference last year. So now I want to hear, though, we have some very special prayer requests I know from our circle leaders. So Rhoda, do you have any that's real special? Come.
This one I just got this afternoon from the Millers, and
Oh, I just read their letter myself from the Millers.
just messaged me too because her father-in-law had COPD.
Okay, they're not hearing a word you're saying.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I am.
But anyway, his father had COPD. He's home now. But with the Millers, prayer for, they're trying to raise money for a new property. They need about $500,000. It's in Querétaro. I can't pronounce that right. But they've raised about $20,000 so far, and somebody's going to meet that. So prayer for this building basically is it. And then Blake Mortensen, that has diabetes. They're in the States right now. He's seeing the endocrinologist today, and he's really struggling, and he's suffering a lot, so prayers for him.
That's type 1, which is much more serious than type 2 diabetes. Okay, where's Rosemary? Quickly, ladies, be ready to come. You can't speak down there because they can't hear you. I want them to hear. If it's worth saying, it's worth hearing.
Okay, everything is pretty much on here. We have 3 ladies that are expecting in the next couple of months, so be in prayer for them. One of them has had problems before, but she's doing good now. And pray for the Terrells in the Middle East. They're over there, and it's, of course, every day it's dangerous, and you'll see from the letter here that they go through things that are only God can get them through. So just really keep them in your prayers. And that's pretty much it. You'll see it on there.
Okay, come right on over, Karen. I know one I want you to talk about,
Okay,
uh,
the remains.
the remains to Spain.
I don't know if y'all remember, but on a Wednesday night back in the fall, we had the Romaines to Spain. We're here, and they're 3 little kids, and they handed out their own prayer cards. Each child had their own prayer cards. Well, I and the little boy, they found out April the 15th he started having symptoms, and they took him in, and he has a very rare brain tumor. And so they put him on an airplane and air freighted him here with his dad. And then Hannah and the 2 girls got on a regular plane, and they came over. And if you'll notice on the prayer sheet that they've done a biopsy on his brain, and they're going to do surgery, but they're not sure just exactly what they're going to do yet. So they want us to really pray that the Lord will lead the doctors and be able to do something with it. He's lost his double vision, and he sees 2 of everything unless he closes one eye, but it's affected his equilibrium too. So he can't walk, and he can't see, and he's having trouble talking. So they really want us to pray, and it's a fast-moving one. So they said they have an email address where they look at it, but they will not respond to anything. It goes through their church up north, and they said they'd love to it's encouraging to read it, but they just can't respond. So if y'all want to give them a word of encouragement, you can go to that. And then if you want to help with medical, they have a fund set up, and it's on the prayer sheet too, and you can send money to that, which will help. So that's our main one. Yes. And then as we get updates, I send them out to our ladies, so I'll send them out to anybody. Then Gary Kraft is having heart problems, and it must be pretty serious, because he said pray that they can get it under control, because if they don't, it's going to cause them to have to come back, and things they've put into place already would be minimized. The Kitchens have gone over there. It's another family, and they ordained them yesterday, and so they're going to be helpers with them, but it'd still be bad if he couldn't stay on the field. So pray for him. And then Keith Stennis, him and 2 of his kids have malaria again. He's had malaria many times, but he said, please pray that he can get back to doing what he needs to do. And Sally's niece had knee surgery, and he said it's hard for her to be sidelined, but her legs are really bothering her. So she said, pray for the knee and that she can get back to doing what she needs to do. Okay.
Sally, we visited Sally. I, of course, read their prayer letter for 20 years, how long they've been on the field. And she is the most organized, I think, of any missionary that I know. And she, when we were there, I mean, everything was right. And she has big groups, and they train pastors. And so we really need to pray for Sally and Keith Stennis because they're doing a great work in Uganda. And then for this little boy, he's probably 6 years old. A little bit older. He's at that age, and they're just getting started. They've been there, but it takes a while to. Some countries you don't start out with a church full. I mean, very rarely do you start with a church. I mean, you have to build, and they have to get confidence in you. Like, who are you? Just leave. They don't care and don't want you there a lot of times. So you have to work to earn that right to be there and to be a minister to them. So those were the special prayer requests, and I appreciate all of you being here. Oh, you've got a new one? We'll introduce your visitor. Melissa. We encourage you to go to your group. Thank you, Rhoda. Okay, anybody else visiting? I didn't even count her a visitor. She's been around so long, I think. But she is new and didn't and went to Circle One. Okay. What I want you to do is, of course, if you have questions for the Cobbs, ask them. I really enjoyed and learned. I didn't want them to stop, but my goal is not to always close this part of the meeting at least by 8:15. And I'd like for you to sign your cards. It'll mean a lot to our ladies that get Mother's Day greetings, especially some are putting a Bible verse on, some are just saying, I'm praying for you, some are just signing their name. But they'll help know you and know that you are praying for them. So let's remember, if we say, I'm praying for you, let's do it. If someone will walk up and say, pray for me, I always try to do it right then. If I say, okay, I'm going to pray for you, but then 10 minutes later, I've talked to 10 other people, and if I so do it, when you say you're going to pray for them, do it. So I don't want to keep you any longer in here. I thank you all for coming, and I really thank the cops for driving down, and they'll ask questions. So everybody knows, follow your circle leaders. I would just have prayer there with your circle and then sign the cards. That would be great. So you are dismissed to your circles. Thank you for coming.